Hello campers! Okay, we are going to get started on the Bob Ross tutorial today. So before we can get started, what you'll need to make sure that you have is all of your supplies out and ready. So I'm going to walk you through what supplies you need before we get started. So you're going to need your paintbrush or your foam. Some of you will have a bigger foam brush and that will work just as fine. Then you also need the brush that you use for the watercolor painting. So make sure you've got the one that has your name on it. If you're at camp, it'll have the tag with your name on it. Otherwise, it's the one that's in your bag. And then you'll need a cup with some water in it and a couple of paper towels over here on the side. Then for the paint, some of you will have gotten your paint in a bag and some of you will have gotten paint on a plate if you're at camp or if you're at home. So either one will work. But for today, I'm going to be using an at-home kit. So I'm going to pull the paint out. You'll have 6 different paint cups or paint spots on your plate. Either way will work. But we'll get those organized in the way that we need. So the white and the black, you're not going to need until later, so let's set those ones aside. And then you'll have a regular blue, kind of a darker blue. Sometimes for the at-home it'll look a little swirled with black. That one's going to be at the top. The blue will be next in the middle. Light blue will be towards the bottom and pink at the very bottom. So how this is going to work is we're going to kind of do a gradual effect going up the canvas. We're going to start with pink, light blue, the royal blue, and then the darker navy blue here at the top. So to get the paint out of the cup, you will have a plastic spoon. If you're at camp, you can use the plastic spoon just to sort of scoop the paint off of the canvas and then put it right where it needs to go. So follow along with me if you're at camp, but just scoop from the plate instead of the cup. So to start, you got to open it up, just sort of set what you don't need aside, and then just kind of swoosh around, kind of spin the cup around, or if you're using the plate, push against the edge of the plate to get all that paint on there, and then just set your garbage off to the side. And you want to put that one almost at the bottom, but you want like an inch above. So kind of right here, you can just tap it on the canvas. Good. And then you can just rinse yours off in the water. It might take a little bit, and that's okay. If it's not coming all the way off, then go ahead and use your paintbrush to sort of scoop it onto the canvas. And I'm using the bigger paintbrush. I recommend you do that or your foam brush and then rinse that off. But if you could get away with not doing that, that would be perfect. I think we can probably just tap it and we don't need all of that. Then you take your light blue, same thing, scoop it out. And it's okay if you have a little bit of pink or the other color left because it's going to end up being blended together anyway. So tap that again, just right above. Right? And then I think I'm just going to use my paper towel and wipe it. So if you have an extra paper towel, which you probably should, go ahead and use that for wiping this off. Then you need your royal blue. Do the same thing, get it off the plate or out of the cup, scoop it up, put it next on the canvas. Good. Let's set that garbage aside. And then for this one, you don't need to wipe the color off because the blues are so similar. So let's scoop out your swirled or darker navy blue. And for those of you that are at camp, if you haven't swirled your color together on the plate yet, you'll need to go ahead and do that before you put it on the canvas. If you forget, not a big deal, you can kind of blend it together on the canvas, but I recommend that you try and swirl this together on the plate before we get going. Okay, then once you have all 4 of those colors, you need to set all of your stuff aside. So kind of clear your space, make sure you have all of the garbage things out of the way. You probably can't see it on camera, but I'm going to do a little cleanup myself just so that they don't get in the way. Okay, now when it comes to blending, we're going to want to start with the lightest color and work our way up. Because if we were to go from the top down to the bottom, we would make a big, muddy, ugly mess down here. So when we start with the bottom, you want to get your big brush or your foam brush, whichever you have. The foam brush will be the kind of the rectangle foam brush. And then you're going to go in an arch. You're going to go back and forth. So what I usually do is I'll take the pink and I'll get the bottom part of the canvas done first. So just back and forth to fill that in. You might need to hold down on the canvas so it doesn't move. Just kind of fill that in there at the bottom. And then once you've got kind of a big portion of the bottom right there, a big rectangle, then you just started doing a small arch, just back and forth, back and forth. And if you feel like you have too much paint on your thing, you can scoop some up and put it back on your plate or back in your cup. So if you feel like you've got a big blob, see how I kind of have a big blob of paint? I don't think I quite need that much. You're welcome to scoop yours off too. I got a lot of paint on my pink. Okay, so just keep arching until you run into that blue paint. Spread it around. You don't want to have any big globs of paint left, how I've got big globs. If you do, just keep brushing it off to the side and scooping it back onto your plate. Okay, and once you get into the blue, you don't need to clean off your paintbrush, except see how mine kind of has a big glob on it? What I've been doing since I have the cup, I'm just scraping it into here. If you have the plate, just swipe it onto the side of the plate. Then just make sure that all is nice and smooth. If you want to make sure your edges are painted, you can do that. And then when you come to the blue, I have so much extra paint on my paintbrush. Yours will be a lot bigger than mine, so it's not going to gather up like it is in my paintbrush. Then you just kind of go right into the blue. Do the same thing, but keep it with the arch, and you'll see how it'll blend a little bit, and that's great. But you don't want to go down into the pink again, not yet. Kind of just stay in the blue. So it's okay if you've got extra paint down there in the blue, same thing. Scoop it up. Put it back into your Tupperware. You can kind of see how mine's swirling a little bit. That's just fine. Okay. Okay, just keep going back and forth. Scooping off the extra paint if you need to. And right here, you can kind of see between my pink and my blue, it's not mixed together. That's okay. We don't need to do that yet. We'll come back and do that at the end. Right now, we're just trying to get the canvas to go from side to side. If you feel like you got a lot of extra paint that's kind of fallen off the side, you can clean that up. But leave this part alone right here for now. Just make sure that you can't see any of the white coming through. It's okay if there's a little bit of the pink showing in your blue. That's going to end up happening at the end anyway, so don't be worried about that. If you feel like you've got a lot of paint on your brush, you can always rinse it off in the water, sort of swirl that around, and then dry it on the paintbrush. Looks like I had a lot of pink in mine. And so as long as you can't see it in the brush, you'll be okay. You can go all the way until the water is clear on your paper towel, but you don't need to. So next we're going to go into the royal blue. And so same thing, you're going to go back and forth. If you're feeling like you're getting big blobs, you know what to do. This one's a little bit runnier. Scoop some of that up. This one's not going to be quite as wide as the other colors because you've got so much of the dark blue up above. And that's really the one we want highlighted there at the top because that's where all of your stars are going to show really well. So just keep going back and forth. And again, see how there's that blob right there? Go ahead and leave that line connecting it to the light blue. Just sort of leave it how it is right now. And we're going to blend that at the end. So then when you get to the navy, same thing. Just kind of keep going back and forth. Pull it out to the edge. Don't want any white showing, none at all. And again, I really put too much paint in your cups at home, girls. I'm sorry about that. better. Okay. Keep going back and forth. Remember that little arch. And your fingers might get a little dirty. It's gonna happen. You can wash them after. If they're really bothering you, go grab an extra paper towel. And if you ever need to pause this video while you're working, you totally can do that. Pause, catch up. Same for you girls at camp. If you're feeling a little bit lost, just raise your hand and one of the leaders at camp will go ahead and pause it so that you can get caught up. So really just take your time and see how you can kind of see the white through here where it's not quite as dark. You just sort of want it to be an even color. So pull from one side all the way to the other side. And you can go in a straight line right now that we've already done the arch. There we go. Okay. So now what we have to do is we've got to connect these two colors together. And then we'll connect the ones beneath that and beneath that. So to get that started, I want to make sure that I've got a nice clean brush to get started. So go back into your water, even if it's a bright pink color or whatever like mine. Rinse it off nice and good, or your foam brush. If you have a foam brush, you're going to need to push off a lot more water than I did. So how mine just needs this, you might need to have an extra paper towel or something to sort of dry off your paintbrush. So just make sure to keep pushing until you don't feel like it's creating a big puddle. Or if you need to and you don't mind getting your hands wet, with a foam brush you can kind of squeeze it over the paint cup. But for those at camp, you just need to get your brush just like I did and then dry it on the paper towel. And for this one, instead of doing an arch, we're just going to go back and forth over the thing, but we're going to start from the darkest color and then go down to the lightest so that they can kind of blend together and create kind of an ombre going from top to bottom. So start here at the top. I usually will drag it along the top edge so that if there's paint on that edge, we can do it, and then same down the side, but just in the navy blue. And then from the top corner, left corner, you just kind of drag it across and then go back the other way. Just go back and forth. And it's okay if yours lightens up so that it's not a dark, dark navy blue. See how mine is kind of an in-between? That's okay. It doesn't have to look super dark. But just blend it until you're happy. If there's a little bit where you feel like there's kind of a lighter color showing through in some areas and a darker in others, if you like how it looks, go ahead and leave it that way. Otherwise, just keep working back and forth until you're happy with how it looks. But the longer strokes from side to side is what's going to make it kind of blend and look even and not have little brush strokes showing in the middle. So when you get down to this arch area, your instinct is going to be to do something as an arch again. You just go back and forth right over that blob. Right, keep blending. And if you're getting a gathering of paint like I am, go ahead and scoop it off onto your plate. Let me pull this back over here. Just sort of scoop it off onto the edge of your plate. And then go right back to dragging it back and forth. Wonderful. Okay, and then same thing. So you can see we got right into the light blue. And I feel like I've got a lot of paint on mine. So if you've got paint gathering up, again, wipe that off. Either back into one of your cups, if you've got a cup, or onto your plate. And then go right back to dragging it back and forth. Because I don't want to have so much of this royal blue that it makes all my light blue disappear. So if you've got a lot gathered up on your brush, this is a good part to kind of scrape that extra off. And then, good. I'm going to actually wipe mine on the paper towel because I feel like it's really spreading down. There we go. That's what I want to see. Good. And if it's getting to the point where you feel like that royal blue is just taking over your light blue, if you get about halfway down, you're like, oh no, it's going to be all royal blue or whatever, you can rinse it off in the water again and clean up your brush a little bit more. But I actually think that looks really beautiful, so I'm going to keep that going. I'm just wiping off the extra as I go. Oops, I did the arch we aren't supposed to do. That's okay, I can brush right over it. So then just keep going back and forth. If you see that white coming through, just go back over it again and again. Okay, and keep going till you get down into the pink. I'm trying to make mine look a little smoother. All right, now we're moving down into the pink section. And this one, obviously, we know that pink and blue, oh, wipe off the extra. We know that pink and blue are gonna make purple, so you might have a little bit of a purple section here where these two colors are blending, kind of a lilac-y color. That's great, it's gonna look awesome. So just keep blending. Again, if it just keeps dragging that light blue and you don't feel like it's blending with your pink, it means you have too much on your brush. So go ahead and wipe that off onto your plate or into one of your cups. You can even wipe the extra on your paper plate, not your paper plate, your paper towel, and then come right back to swiping back and forth. Okay. And then just keep going. You don't have to go all the way to the bottom of the pink. You just want to go until you feel like it looks nice and neat and blends. We are going to do this all again to make it look an extra smooth. So you either need to wipe off the extra. If you've got your foam brush, put it in the water. You're going to need some extra paper towels. So you can put it on your paper towel, or you may just have to be getting your hands wet and put it there. Then go back to the top and start going. And this one will go a little bit faster just because you've already got most of the extra paint off. So just back and forth, making it look nice and blended. And yours is gonna look probably even smoother than mine because your brushes are a little bit wider, which is wonderful. And look, I feel like I'm even getting a little too much paint right there. If that happens to you, same thing. It's okay to wipe it off on this time around too. Just back and forth blending, wiping off extra if you've got it. Make sure I, right there, just accidentally wiped my blue into this purpley pink area, and then it's got it on my brush. And I knew if I went back to the canvas, guess what color is gonna end up on my canvas? I'm gonna have this color showing up down here. Don't want that. So if that happens to you when you're cleaning it off, just make sure that you wipe that extra off from your brush. Then go right back to where you were, and keep going down. If you're already way ahead of me and at the bottom of the canvas, great. Okay, you'll just have to wait till I catch up. I'm a little bit slow. Beautiful. Okay, and I'm gonna leave it right there because I want this bottom part to stay nice and pink. So then you'll notice, like, your canvas might have a lot of paint that's sort of gathering here on the side. Just sort of drag your brush down and wipe that extra off. It's okay. So I got a little bit of blue down there from wiping that off. Not the end of the world. Just sort of wipe that edge off. There we go. And then where that happened, I'll just go back and sort of blend it a little more. Okay, then I'll be a little more careful this time. We're gonna actually go from bottom to top. So I got extra, then I'll scoop it onto my plate. And then look, I accidentally did it again. So for the campers, I'll probably have paused and tell you not to do that. But for at-home girls, if you get some of the colors that blended onto the side, just go ahead and blend that in as much as you can. Okay, and I got some of my white canvas showing through right here because I accidentally put a little too much water there. So what I'll do if that happens, I just go up into the color that's up above, I do a big swipe, which will end up getting some color on my brush, and then I come back down to here. And then I'll swipe to blend that in. Okay. Going in one direction this time, just to make that all go, and it's okay. See how I've got a little bit right there? We're gonna have trees that are gonna kind of hide some of these edges. So we don't really need to worry about that. I'm gonna wipe that one with my finger. Okay, so at this point, we've got our beautiful sky all set to go for our pretty northern lights one. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the trees that are right here at the bottom. And so you need to take all of this mess, you can leave this mess right here, but scoot it out of the way. And then your protective covering, that's why we set those up. It's gonna be messy. You're gonna need this for your stars and the black paint. So this might be on your plate. Otherwise, if it's on your cup, just take the lids off and set those aside. The white one, super duper watery. So don't open it over your canvas like mine. Open it off to the side because it might spill. But it's really watery like milk. So you're gonna need to set that aside because otherwise you'll get a weird splatter. If for some reason that happened to you, just take your big brush and sort of blend that white in. Just kind of go back and forth and blend it in if for any reason that happened to you. If you happen to get any black or any other colors on it, you can always kind of scoop that extra color off with your finger, wipe that on the paper towel, and then just use your big brush to blend that back in. So for the trees, what we're gonna do is we need our watercolor brush and our black paint. And I usually like to get mine wet first. So if you'll remember from our watercolor tutorials how to do a little line, how you're barely touching when we make those fine lines, we're gonna need to be making a few of those. So how before we did an arch like this for the color, we're gonna be doing opposite with the trees. We're gonna kind of have the trees leaning almost to make a triangle. We're not gonna have them touch, not at all, but we're gonna have them leaning a little bit and create almost like a smile of trees down here on the bottom. We're gonna have some big tall trees on the side, on both sides, sort of angling in a little bit, and then we're gonna have some standing more upright down here at the bottom. So let me get you started with the paint. You just need a little bit on your paintbrush. As you can see, I'm gonna put it over a lighter color so you can see. Just the tip of your paintbrush. And you kind of want your paintbrush there at the point if you possibly can. So I usually start from the corner so that I can get my angle right. And so very lightly, almost barely touching, you're gonna go from the corner, not even to the top of the pink, just kind of where it blends. And it's okay if your lines like mine aren't a full complete line, that's okay. You might just need to get a little extra paint. Then come to the other side, do the same thing. Lightly touching. It's okay if your trunk gets really fat, don't worry about that. You can just keep trying to do lighter ones. If you're not feeling very confident, you can do some lines on your paper towel to practice, or even on your plastic table covering if you have one of those. If you're also feeling like your paint is a little dry and sort of getting stuck, then just get a little bit of water on your paintbrush. That might help too. So go back into the paint, get some more on there, and now we're just going to create a bunch of lines. So I was touching it too lightly and it wasn't even staying on there. Okay, and you don't need to go back for paint every single time. So as you can see, they were super angled over here, and I kept them angled, and then I started making them stand up tall. So here in the middle, I have some that are tall and some that aren't. And right now, if it's super light gray like mine, that's okay, because you can go back and add darker color later. So in the middle, you want to have maybe a few that are tall, some that are super short, like they can even be that short. All different sizes. And then when you come back to this side, start angling again a little bit. Well, it doesn't have to be super angled. If yours end up all straight up and down, if this angle is too stressful for you, you don't have to do that. You can totally just make them straight up and down. Okay, so once you've hit this point, kind of go back to some of your trees, if you have any that were light gray, and sort of trace over them with a little bit darker black, because we want those trees to be nice and strong and dark. And if you have a toothpick, which I forgot to grab my toothpicks for this, but you can also stick the toothpick in the paint and sort of drag it along. You'll need to have enough paint on that toothpick just so that it won't sort of scratch off all of the paint underneath. If it does, that's not a bad thing. It actually kind of looks cool. But you just get enough paint on that toothpick and then you can drag it to make little teeny tiny trunks if doing it with the watercolor just feels too hard to you. Okay, so I'm going back just to get some of my gray ones dark again. And then we're going to start turning them into trees. You don't have to have as many as I have. If you feel like you have a lot less trunks than I do, or you feel like you've got a whole bunch more than I do, it's really okay. Every single painting can look a little bit different, they don't have to look the same. Okay, so at this point, what we're gonna do, I have some that look a little gray, some that look dark. I've got a few tall ones, some short ones. Beautiful. We want it all blended up. You need to gather up some more paint on your brush. And now for the trees, we're going to be doing dots. So you don't want to have a whole bunch of paint on the end, just a little bit. It's better to start with not enough paint and then go back and get more paint than to start with too much paint. Because if you start with too much paint, you can't fix that as easily as you can if you start with too little. So I like to start with one of these tall trees that's angled on the side. And for a tree, you're sort of creating almost like a pizza slice. Oops, I got some paint on my hand. If you get paint on your hand, make sure to wipe that off on your paper towel, because otherwise it might end up on your painting. So you're kind of creating a little pizza slice. So don't draw with your paintbrush, but it'll sort of go from the top of the tree and get a little fatter, but this pizza slice has a stick. So maybe it's a triangle popsicle would be a better way to describe it. But you have a little pizza slice with the trunk coming out the bottom. You don't want to go all the way to the bottom, but we want the branches to gradually get wider. So let me show you what I mean. Start at the top with a dot and just kind of do dots from side to side. Just little dots filling it in. Really super duper duper light. You're barely touching. It's totally okay if you see pink coming through. The dots don't all have to touch. Go like that, just side to side, very soft. If you push too hard, your branches are going to get really fat and thick, which will work okay too, but I think most of you will be happier. So I'm going to stop right there. See how it almost got to the bottom? Okay, now I'm pretty much out of paint, so I'm going to need to go back and get more for my next tree. So sometimes when I don't want to get too much, I'll just scoop from the side. So if you are going off of the plate, I'll just kind of pull some out onto the plate just to get a fine little bit. Once you've got that loaded up, if you're feeling fast and confident, you can move faster than me getting your trees done. But I'll just find some other tree that I really want to stand out and do some little dots. I like to leave a little bit of pink space shown behind my dots for my tree, because I think it just sort of reminds us that sky is back there. And then get more paint, and let's get some other trees going. And as you can see, I'm not going one tree that's right next to each other to the next one, because that might get a little crowded. Some of these are just going to be big empty trunks, because some trees in the forest don't have a lot of branches on them. We'll come back, we're going to fill in and do a lot more than this, but to start, I kind of like to jump almost more than every other tree, but I'll skip a few trunks in between. Just keep doing those dots. And see how mine started getting gray at the bottom? It's okay to come back and get a little more paint and go back and make that tree darker if it feels too light. And you can go as far down as you like. If you don't really like the trunk showing, you can go to the bottom. That's just fine too. So then we'll just keep going. Just a little bit of paint. Remember, less paint is better than too much paint. Always better to start with less and add on than to start with too much and have to clean it up. That can get stressful. So little light dots. Now my brush is starting to get kind of, I feel like it's getting really pushed out on the end. So just go back to your water if that's the same for you. Go back to your water, rinse that out, dry it off on the paper towel. It's fine if there's still black paint showing, and that'll kind of help it come back to the point. Get some more paint on there. You can go back to your tree. See how much nicer, how it started making smaller dots for me again. Okay. Now, this is where you kind of get to decide which trees you want to fill in, which ones you want to leave blank. I for sure like to have these edge ones as trees. I don't want an empty trunk on the edge, so I always will make sure that those furthest trees are trees. Or a whole bunch of dots that look like trees, because that's honestly what we're doing. And then you just kind of do whatever you think looks nice, or you can copy me. And make sure you leave some of that pink showing through. You don't want your trees to be solid. You want some of that showing through. And once you get the hang of it, these trees will start coming together really fast. Don't feel like you have to take a long time on everyone, but do whatever makes you feel comfortable. Like I said, if you're feeling like I'm going really fast and you're feeling a little scared of these trees, go ahead. Pause the video, take a little extra time to get confident. If you really want to practice a tree, you can do it over here on your paper plate and practice your dots and things like that. Not your paper plate. I keep calling it a paper plate. Your paper towel. I think you know what I meant. All right, get some more paint in there. Come back to our trees. Let's see, I'm gonna do this one. And I have too much water on here. I rinse my brush off and I can kind of see it's puddling up. So I'm going to go back to my paper towel, which I now remember to call the right thing, and dry off some of that water. There we go. Oh, it's still too wet. Wipe, wipe, wipe. Okay, here we go. Back to the trees. And you might have not noticed what I did there. I accidentally kind of made it too wide at the top of my line. So I just added a single dot above it, and that'll kind of create that triangle shape for you. So if you make that mistake, just add a dot above and that'll kind of make it the correct tree shape for you. Just keep going. I think these are looking awesome. And if your trees are a lot bigger than mine, that's fine too. Some people will pull their trees all the way up. And at the end, I'll look and see. I might want my trees to go a little bit higher, but we'll see. If you want your trees to go all the way up to that light blue, totally can do that too. Whatever you think looks nicer. So this one tree right here looks really lonely to me in the middle, so I'm gonna make sure to add some paint to that one. So on mine, my paintbrush, I've got some hairs coming out. I'm just gonna pull those hairs out, stick them on my paper towel, if I can get them off, and then you don't have to worry about it showing up in yours. If for some reason you have one of those paint hairs fall into your painting, don't worry about it right now, just sort of leave it in the painting. Once the painting dries, you can scratch it off and peel it up. But for right now, just leave it where it is. Otherwise, you'll end up smushing and smearing your trees. That's no good. Get more paint as you need it. Keep making those beautiful trees. Dot, dot, dot. Make a little pizza on a stick. There we go. Okay. I'm liking this. So I feel like for me, I want this side to have the trees be a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna go over there because I'm kind of hitting a point where I'm feeling like, oh, I think it's almost time to be done with my trees. Okay, so I feel like I've got way too much stick showing at the bottom of mine. So I'm gonna make some of my bigger trees go all the way to the bottom. You can look at yours and decide what you think. I think some of them need to go all the way to the bottom. So those big trees on the corner, I'm not going to have those have their sticks showing. I'm going to go all the way to the edge on those ones. Yeah, I like how that looks better. So if you'd like to copy me and do that, you can do that too. Good. So then, because I did that with those side trees, it wouldn't really make sense if all of these have theirs showing. So some of those ones, I'm going to pick one that I really want to stand out. I'm going to have that one go to the bottom. Beautiful. And then pick a couple of more. One thing, like if you have a really thick trunk that you want to hide, yeah, just make that tree go to the bottom. No one will know that it has a really thick trunk. Just sort of hide the trunk under a whole bunch of dots and, whoa, it was a tree, it was always meant to be a tree. Yeah, you'll get it. That's the nice thing about painting. You can kind of make mistakes. No one has any idea. You can totally pretend that that was completely on purpose. Okay, so now that I've made some trees go down a little bit further, I'm gonna make this one go down too. I feel like some of my trunks are standing out more, so I'm gonna make this one, I am going to let the stem show, but I'm going to add some dots around that one. Okay, now to help it not feel like there's so much pink at the bottom, we're going to create some little lines. For those of you that have a toothpick, I recommend that you get the toothpick, but you kind of stick it in the paint and very lightly make really fine lines. If you want to use your paintbrush, you've got to do it super duper light, like barely touching the paper. Or canvas, I guess it is. But we're just creating some extra tree trunks just to make it seem a little bit fuller. And if it starts to look a little dry, go back and get more paint on your paintbrush or your toothpick, whichever you're doing. Just trying to create your little teeny tiny trunk lines in between, which will make it feel more like a real forest. Then look again, kind of take a pause, look at your trees. If there's any areas where you really feel like you notice those trunks, like for me, here over on the sides, I feel like I'm really noticing my trunks a lot right here. So I'm gonna make the trees come a little bit further down here. I'm gonna have one of my trees do that again to hide some of that. Yep, I like that better. And again, make sure you don't cover up all that pink. You want that beautiful light coming through. All right. Okay, I am happy with my trees, so I'm going to leave them the way that they are. If you want to keep working on your trees, go ahead and pause the video right here and keep working on your trees till you're happy, and then we're going to move on to the stars up in the sky. And again, I'm going to show just for girls before we keep going. If you get down here and you feel like your trees are way too short and you want to make a couple of big taller trees, you can do that at this point. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All you need to do is get a little extra paint, and you're just kind of like you were at the beginning. I would come and start at this corner and just sort of do a line right through your other trees and have that line go a little taller. Then you'll need to have the ones beside it need to be a little bit shorter. So you could just add a taller tree. Yeah, somewhere over here on the side. Make a shorter one next to it, like that. If you feel like one of these ones on the bottom aren't quite tall enough, you want it to be taller in the middle, just sort of drag straight above one of your normal trees, and then you can kind of make it wider. So we'll make a couple of these ones down here taller. This is only if you're unhappy with how your trees are looking. If you want them to be taller, you can do this. And then you just go back and you just add those dots again to connect it to the tree that's already underneath. See, and voila, you've got taller trees. Make sure you get all those turned to trees before you pause or move on. Beautiful. Whoops, don't have enough paint. Need a little more. A little dot, dot, dot. Beautiful. Okay. All right. I'm really liking how that's looking. And it's nice to have some areas where the black looks really black and sometimes it looks a little more gray. That's fine too. If yours is nice and solid and black and you were able to do that, that's wonderful too. You just want these trees to look like trees. And I think we've done a great job. So now you can put this paintbrush into water, and you do need to get it rinsed off really, really well because we're about to put it in the white. So take your time on this rinsing. If your water is really dark blue, kind of like mine is, you might actually need to go rinse it in a sink or in fresh water. So if you need to have a leader bring you fresh water, you can do that. Or if you're at home, you can just run to the kitchen sink or something like that and rinse your brush a little bit more. But make sure that you've got most of the paint off. So this one, I'm not going to be able to get most of the paint off just because I can't go get more water while I'm filming this video. But I think that I'm good where I'm at. So with this, again, if you were at home and you have this little cup, or girls at camp, be very, very careful with this water because you'll be super unhappy if it accidentally spills all over your painting. But what you need to do is get your entire paintbrush, this is your watercolor paintbrush, dipped into this white. Kind of swirl it around. I'm going to put mine down. Now before you do anything, I like to tap it over my water. We're just going to put it here on our paper towel. So let me make sure you can see this paintbrush. Let's get this big paintbrush out of there. Okay, so make sure you've got tons of white paint in your paintbrush. Mine even went up a little bit, that's fine. But then you need to go over your water. We need to tap almost all of it off. I know that seems completely backwards, but if you were to try and make stars with as much as is on your paintbrush right now, you would just make big, huge drops of white and it'll not look like stars to you. So what you need to do is fill it up nice and full, but then over your water, sort of tap the edge of it. And sometimes I'll put it into the water a little bit so it doesn't get on my canvas. But just kind of tap the edge, and that's a good idea. Move that away from your canvas. I can't move it quite as far as you can, but move that away from your canvas and keep tapping until you feel like almost nothing's coming off. Once you hit that point, that's when you're ready to put it above your canvas. So with stars, more stars show up here where it's dark than they do down here. So we're gonna put a lot of stars up here and not very many here. So you wanna start at the top where it's dark and then gradually move down. What you do is you have it over the canvas and then you tap hard with your finger. So just like that. And it's okay, it's gonna splatter. Hopefully you're far enough away from your neighbor if you're at camp. And you can go all the way down. Don't do very many down in the pink. Kind of try and stay away from the pink. See how I got some on a tree? It's okay. There are stars that show through there. Don't worry about that. But then come back up where that dark navy blue is. Make sure you splatter a bunch up there. Don't forget about the edges. Sometimes you think you just sort of focus on the middle. And then as you get towards the end, you'll notice it's starting to make smaller ones. That's okay, that's beautiful. You want stars to be all sorts of different shapes, but I'm mostly just focusing up here on this navy blue part because that's how it is in the sky. Wherever it's darker, it looks like there's more stars. And just go until you're happy with how many stars you have. If you don't want as many as me, you can stop sooner. If you want more than me, you can keep going. Just keep tapping hard. Actually really love how that looks. Okay, and that is it. This is your painting, girls. If you have things where you feel like the stars really got onto your tree and you're not very happy about that, you can go back to your black paint. Just get a glob of black paint and just sort of put it on top of that white. Just sort of blend it in. It'll make it look gray to start, but just blend that in to be part of your tree. Okay, but I think that those turned out beautiful. So this is your night, I don't even know what to call it, but we're just going to call it your Bob Ross painting, but this is how it is done. I'm sure yours look beautiful too. Thank you for following along. You're going to need to let this sit where it is for a couple of hours. If you're at camp, they'll let you know where to put your canvas so that you can do it there. If you haven't already written your name on the back at camp, please have a leader help you. But hopefully before they started this video, they had you go ahead and start and write your name on the back first. But you need to let this be where it is. It's going to take about an hour to dry, and then you'll be able to take it home and hang it up and and feel really good about what you did. And you can even, with a Sharpie later after it dries, you can sign your name, make it look really authentic like a real one. But congratulations, girls. I'm sure they look beautiful. Can't wait to see them. Thanks so much.